Hello, welcome to this video. So here we are, a render tutorial with CycleX Blender 3.2. My name is Damien Rohrbach and we're here to make a very pretty jewelry render. Let's get started. Okay, say goodbye to the devil cube, say goodbye to the light and welcome the darkness. Now, because it's very important to always take new creative path, we're going to start backwards. So first we're going to create a stand for our jewel. Ready, so let's add a mesh cylinder. Let's make dimension 40, keep 5 on Z. Let's go add modifier bevel. Sweet, let's make it Control A. Scale. Now find a suitable amount for your bevel. Now let's add a subdivision surface. Okay, so I end up at 0.85 with 3 segments for the bevel and subdivisions at level 3. Save your project. CycleX render jewel. Save. Now let's call this base 1. Create a new collection, call it stand. Grab and drop the base into the new collection. All right, now we're going to create a frame for the base. Let's go to the front view numpad 1. Let's add mesh plane to the view. Edit mode. Alt Z, Alt A, B. Let's move this up here. A, adapt the position somewhere here. B, adapt the thickness here, more or less. Now do an A, W, subdivide a couple of times like this. Now take the corners, scale to make them a bit rounder. Save. Now go to edge mode. Select this edge, delete edge. You have a small space like this. Here we can adjust the depth, so we can do that in edge mode or vertex mode. Here the depth, and also maybe this will receive a small decoration. You'll see that later. It will be very neat. Okay, we have all of this. Great. Now we need to remove the inside vertices. B selection, select these, delete vertices. C, those remaining ones, delete vertices. Okay, we got the frame. Save. Now select everything. We are not centered. So let's go to global positions, and on the y-axis, let's come to 0. We're on the axis. This is great. Save. Let's do a spin doctor, if you know the band. Okay, spin, center 0, 0, 0, angle 360, steps 120. And let's have the auto merge, which is by default on. Okay, Alt Z. A, normals to the outside, just to be sure. Exit edit mode, save. Call this base frame. Object shade smooth, object data properties, normals, auto smooth. We get this. Great. Now we want to center the base to the ground. So edit mode, Alt A, front view, Alt Z, B, select the last level of vertices, do a shifted cursor to selected. This will position the cursor exactly at the base of the frame. Exit edit mode, go to object, set origin to 3D cursor. Now you can set the Z at 0 and actually everybody at 0, just like this. Now take the small cushion and put it to the according position. Right here should be fine. Okay, now let's start adding material. So new material, this should be maybe some kind of leather. We'll see that later. This might be a type of wood. Great. Actually, you can already work on the view display color to differentiate your objects better. Something like this, a bit creamy, and the leather somehow darker. Or maybe it will be a white leather. We don't know yet. Save. Now add mesh torus and minor radius 0.5. Segments 120 and 40. Okay, the major radius at 25, it's pretty close. Okay, front view, move up and adapt to the small space we did earlier. Center it as good as you can. Here, if the fit is not ideal, let's go to modifiers, add modifiers, solidify, offset 1, and find a thickness that suits your space, just like this. All right, leave some distance. It's going to be pressure. Object, shade smooth, material, new material, brass, so maybe something golden. Okay, say, call this base decoration. Now maybe on the frame you'd like to add a bevel modifier, 2 levels, and maybe also you'll need a subdivision surface, level 2 or 3, depends what looks more attractive. So I'll stay at 1 segment for the bevel, amount 0.2, and 2 levels up, and 2 levels of subdivision surface. Let's say the stand is ready. Now let's go to the internet. Search poly habit. So they used to be known as HDRI habit. Don't forget to donate to these people or team. They do an excellent job. And especially if what you're going to do with these files will be commercial. There, it's almost an obligation, or should be, to donate. Okay, so Polyhaven is a place that every designer should know. And we are going to browse the HDRIs. Okay, we are going to go to the studios and we're going to download Brown Photo Studio number 2. So choose the default 4K AXR final format. It's the best actually. And download. Now let's go back to Blender. So we're going to load this environment. So this time in the tutorial, I'm showing what HDRI I'm using for this specific render, so anybody can follow and make exactly the same scene, because that's what many people like best. Okay, so environment, texture, open, go search your file wherever you put your file. This is my Brown Studio number 2 4K AXR. Double click. Okay, save. Now let's go to shading. Okay, here let's go at render preview. Okay, here let's make some settings. Well, remove the denoising on the preview. Already set the light path. Let's go to 42. So all these settings are important at the beginning already because they're going to change the look of the entire scene. So even if you don't understand or you don't know because you're not really seeing any difference on the screen, on the preview, but believe me, they're important already and set them right away, just like me. Okay, now we're going to go to World Shader. And we're going to tweak something right away. Search for light path. Okay. Now add a mix shader. Beware, mix shader is not mix RGB, mix shader. And plug the S camera ray into the factor node, just like this. All right. Now, this gives us a black background, but we can add an RGB node right here and set it into the missing shader. Okay, so here we can have a simple color background. Let's stay at something gray for the moment. Save your file. Now let's work on the materials. Let's select the first base, which is called leather. Load an image texture, plug it into base color, and let's go for your favorite leather texture. Okay, so search for your favorite leather texture, this one. Okay, this is what I get. Now I'm going to add an ambient occlusion node right here in the middle. Let's put a distance of 15 to start with. Let's go at 24 samples. Now, plug your texture into normal. Obviously, you need to add a vector bump and plug it into height because we're using an image. And actually, because we're using an image, make the filter cubic. It's better for the pixels. They look prettier, smoother, nicer, lovelier. Great. Here, let's go at box blend 1. Let's do a diagonal key to have a look at this. Let's add an input texture generated into the vector. Add vector mapping right in the middle. And the Z scale, let's go at 0.5, 0.2. And you can see that it's starting to take an appropriate proportion. Let's save. Now, the distance for the bump, let's go at -1, and the strength at 0.3. Depends the scale of your object. This looks pretty nice. So I think I'm going to prefer a white leather. So I'm going to add a color hue saturation node right here. And let's go at saturation 0.1. This is very lovely for a diagonal key. Let's go to the rest. So the frame. So I said wood at first, but in fact, let's go with a simple plastic. Okay, here let's bring the metallic at 0.5. This is pretty neat. And we're going to add a musgrave texture on the normal map and add a vector bump. It also goes on the height factor. Scale, let's go at 150. We're going to need the texture coordinates generated into the vector of the musgrave. Add the vector mapping right here. And also let's find a scale on the Z scale. Okay, so let's go at something like 5 for the Z scale, or maybe even 10, to have a very slight grain on your plastic texture. Maybe the X and Y also need a bigger scale, so the border looks even. Now, the strength of the bump at 0.1 or 0.2, just to have a very subtle granulation on your plastic. Now for the color, I'm going to keep it white for the moment because the work on the color will be done later. Now it's much too soon to think about the palette of our renderer. Okay, on the decoration, this is brass. So metallic 1, roughness 0.1. Okay, the color, something golden, but brass is warmer than gold. But let's add an ambient occlusion. Let's use the eyedropper to take the same color and plug the color into base color. Distance 25. Now copy, Control C, paste that. We have white here, so let's go at 1 for everybody and put the ambient occlusion also on the plastic. Here we already have it. Here maybe we'll add metallic and roughness, some tweaks on the leather later when we import the jewel, but we're not there yet. Now let's go to layout very quickly. Add mesh plane at 0. The dimension may be 250. We'll see about the dimension a bit later. Save, rename the plane to floor. Now let's go to shading. So the floor is going to get a new material. So here right away, I'm going to add an ambient occlusion node, plug into the base color. We're going to make it pink. Distance maybe go at 10. We'll tweak that later if necessary. And we have this. But today we're going to do something nicer. Okay, this goes like this. Let's add a color ramp, black to white, plug it into alpha. Okay, for now, we're not really seeing the effects of that. We need to add some more nodes. Let's add a gradient texture, plug the color into factor. Okay, now we are seeing that the alpha, or the transparency, is starting to work from left to right. And actually it goes with this. But I don't want just a straight gradient like that. I want the center to be solid and the corners to be invisible. So we'll have a circular, very nice floor. For that, let's go at quadratic sphere. And now we can see that the center of the sphere is here in the corner. And I want the center to the center. So for that, we need to input texture coordinates. plugin generates it into a vector. Now we need a vector mapping and we can start moving. Okay, so now here, let's go minus 0.5 on X, perfect, and minus 0.5 on the Y-axis. Now it's centered, but the center is too transparent and the corners are not just that transparent. So let's move this node. You can see the transparency starts just at the edge of that circle. And let's bring this closer, closer, closer. So we have the full transparency there at the center. This is a very neat. Okay, so you'll have to adapt that depending on the distance to the camera, your angle of the camera, etc., etc. Okay, let's go to layout. Let's import your jewel. So most of the time you're going to have an object file. And this is my ring for render. Perfect. So this is the ring I designed a couple of days ago based on the drawing. Go check out the videos of the drawing, of the 3D modeling. They're very nice. Okay, so here I have these objects. Let's create a new collection. Let's call it jewel. Let's drag and drop the parts because I have the gemstones and the ring. Okay, so now let's take everybody here. Side view, rotate. Let's bring that to the base and centered. Touching the base, top view. So now we're ready to make the materials of the ring. Let's go to shading. Okay, so let's start with the gold. So what I can do for gold is take the brass, make an A, copy everybody. Let's go to the gold here. So here I need a new material. Let's call it, let's make a copy. If your object already has a material, let's make a copy, call this one gold. So it goes only to the ring. Otherwise, all the objects with the same materials are going to get that same material, and maybe that's not what you want. Okay, here, let's erase this, delete. Let's do a Control V to paste. Well, this is the brass. It looks pretty good as gold, but we're going to tweak it a bit different. So like I said at the beginning, the gold is generally a bit less saturated like that. Might be lighter, might be a bit darker. Okay, so the color depends on the alloy you're using for your gold. All right, here we're going to add a bevel node right away. So bevel node here, plug it into normal samples. Let's go at 24. And radius, maybe 0.1, depends on your design, or 0.475. Not too strong to not lose any detail. Okay, for the gemstones, I'm going to do very simple materials. If you want more advanced materials, go to Blender Market and buy the procedural gemstone collection materials for cycles, and you'll get amazing gemstone. But today, let's go easy. It's going to look very nice. So the diamond, this is diamond. Let's make a new material here. Diamond, specular 1, tint 1, roughness 0, IOR 2.418. Transmission 1, and we can see that they're looking already pretty good. So we're not going to create fake dispersion today. It's not necessary in most of the cases. Here, garnets. So let's make a copy, new material, garnet. So here also specular 1, roughness 0. Okay, if you don't know the IOR of a gemstone, let's go to the internet, garnet IOR. Most of the time you are going to find the data. So here garnet 188 should be fine. Let's go back to Blender. Garnet IOR 1.88. Transmission 1, and these are Hessanite garnets. They're like orange, like this. Okay, or maybe a bit more yellow and your gemstone. Okay, on the garnets, you can maybe put the roughness at 0.03 and also the transmission roughness at 0.1 because they're not totally clear. Okay, save this. Now the tourmaline here, let's create a new material, tourmaline. Okay, let's go to the internet. Tourmaline IOR 1.61, 1.64. I'm going to go at 1.62. Let's go back to Blender. So Tourmaline IOR 1.62 transmission 1. Okay, specular 1, roughness 0, and the color, okay, this is really nice. So now we still have a couple of things that we can tweak. All right, let's do all that. Let's go to layout. Let's select the base elements right there, and let's scale that. Here should be fine, but let's keep 1 on the z-axis. Okay, now the camera angle. Let's come here. So we already have the camera. Let's make Control 0 to set the camera view. Okay. Now let's start working on the resolution. We're going to make a square render 4K at 200%. Now the camera clip and put a lot higher number like this. Viewport display, the size 150. Let's go at top view. Maybe we're just a bit too far. Let's come here. Okay, we'll tweak that step by step. But here I want to see the brand on the inside. Okay, let's start with a preview render right here. Okay, this is pretty neat. I can tweak the scale of the floor because then I will add a very nice harmonic color for the background. Okay, let's go to the front view. Let's add light, area light from the side, rotate it like this, bring it to the level of the base and the ring, somewhere like here. Now power 8500, shape rectangle, and 10 on Y, or maybe much more on Y. Let's go at 50 on Y, 5 on X. We'll tweak that later. Now nodes, use nodes to set the strength. Let's start something very strong like this. This is way too strong and that's bad for our transparency. Let's go maybe at 55. Okay, at 5 we're pretty good. Let's go at the camera view. Okay, we're too far and too smooth. I want sharper shadow. So size 1 on X and 10 on Y, or maybe even 5 on Y. You can see the sharper shadow right there. Now we're going to add a depth of field. So let's add an empty plane axis. Let's call it dove depth of field. Let's tweak it here to the corner of this gemstone. Let's go to 0 numpad for the camera view and let's start looking at the strength. So here I want to be able to read the brand a bit better than this, and I'm going to go at maybe 0.1 for the depth of field. This is pretty neat. Okay, so this might look good to many people already, but I still want to work on the harmony on the palette for the base and the background. Let's go to shading. So now let's say that in fact I want the background to be pink, a light pink, like the one I have for the floor, and maybe red or some other kind of pink, this kind of pink. So now let's go to the floor object, and I'm going to change. I want the floor to be orange, I think, something like this. Okay, let's finish tweaking this. This looks great. And now also, well, okay, maybe here for the base frame, I can bring a nice lime color like this, or maybe a stronger pink, a reddish pink like this. Goes with the stone pretty well. maybe darker also. You can go at a dark plastic maybe. Black is maybe more luxurious, classy. If you want something more dynamic, you can maybe work with green, which is the complementary color to the oranges, pinks, and red, or maybe something bluish. This is more dynamic, more attractive, more modern, but it's a bit more tacky. Honestly, you have to admit that. So everybody has their own taste, but anyway, there are cultural references to the colors. This is more modern and less classy, obviously. It's also younger. That's a positive touch. But the ring is not really for young people. This design is not that modern. It's much decorated. So in my case, I am going to stick to black. Okay, this is great. Let's check the render settings. Maybe let's go at 450 samples. The open image denoiser, it's the best one to keep the sharp details, which is very important in a jewelry render. Noise threshold is pretty good. Light path are already set. Remember to set them at the beginning because that changes a lot on how the light behaves in the gemstones. Great. Now, maybe just one last detail before we make the final render. The gold. So, polished gold exists and perfectly polished gold also exists. And obviously, perfectly polished gold, right new from the atelier, has no scratch at all. Okay, so this is realistic. But, you know, in real life, jewels, gold, they get scratches. So maybe you want some scratches. So most of the time, I use an image texture for that. Let's plug it into the bevel, add a vector bump, height, because it's not a real normal map. Now, scratches, maybe I do have, okay, this is perfect. Let's take this. Okay, here we are going to use texture coordinates generated, add vector mapping. Okay, this is very interesting, obviously very ugly. That would work very nice for a textured gold, a very rough gold. Okay, let's go at box, blend 1, filter cubic, strength 0.01. Depends how much you want the scratches to be visible. Camera view, Alt A, save. So I kept everybody's happy. Let's go at solid view, F12 for the render. This is the cherry on the cake. Jewelry rendering tutorial like a pro with Damien Rohrbach, the jewelry Rockstar. Thanks everybody for your support. Don't forget to become members or buy my assets, my wonderful assets on the Blender market. Or also use the new super thanks, which is the heart-shaped icon under the video. Support my work and this channel for more videos with the super thanks. And as always, take care, be nice to people, be nice to animals, be nice to the planet. And see you soon.